I think that we're saying is that there's one thing to talk about, your descent, which is like um, a person of indigenous descent versus a person of non-indigenous descent. We use that distinction, but I would like to also think about the idea of having an indigenous relationship to place, because I think what you're just telling us is there are people of indigenous descent who no longer have indigenous relationship to place because of what's happened, the history of what's gone on, right? And so to me, I'm really interested in this idea. We've had this question, I've had this question asked to me many times. How do we recover that indigenous relationship to place? And so I wanted to kind of think about that for a minute. And so maybe start with this story, which is I have taken a lot of people out with me hiking and backpacking through the wilderness, including a bunch of, well, since I'm an electrical engineer and I've done some consulting on that side, we'll say, let's think about like college students that are majoring in computer science and they spend an awful lot of time behind computers doing this, right? And you take them out, and the first thing you notice is that when you're out backpacking is their relationship to place. And it's basically this. How many trees do you think they know? None. How many of the animals do you think they know? Squirrel? Right? Okay. Do you think they know how to find the waters that are running clean enough to drink? No. Do they know how to build shelter? Do they know how to make a fire? Do they know how to? No. And what's happening is basically this. They are walking through the natural landscape that surrounds them, and they are aliens in that landscape. In that everything that they know to support them is in that little backpack on their back. So they're like an astronaut walking through the forest with their spacesuit on, right? Because their life support system is strapped on their back that came from civilization. That's their relationship with place. It's scary. How many resources do they see around them? None. Everything is a problem. And so I invite them at some point to stop when we're in a beautiful location where all those resources are surrounding us. And I can see all of these resources I need to make medicine, to make food, to build shelter, to make fire, all these kinds of things, right? And I say, put your backpack down, put it over here, and just stand here and look. And imagine what it would have been like to have been here several hundred years ago. There's no more Walmart. There's no McDonald's or Taco Bell. For hundreds of miles in every direction, it's landscape like this. And at your age, if you had grown up here in that time period with an indigenous relationship to land, you would have known how it would have felt like home. You would have known how to make your shelter. You would have known what plants could feed you. You would have known how to relate to the animals. You would have known what the birds were telling you and how the birds were telling you where the predators and the dangerous animals were. And also, you would have known if you were sick, what plants could heal you. You would know what fibers could make cordage. All of these things, by the time you were actually 14, 15 years old, that would have been baseline knowledge of place. And so there is, I would say, on one hand, we can talk all we like about, oh, we need to have an indigenous relationship to place. If you don't have any of that knowledge of place, how are you going to have that relationship to place? Because if you have no knowledge of place, you go out into the natural landscape and your backpack is your life support system. And you are dealing with that landscape as if you are on alien terrain. So one of the things in studying this, one of my mentors in all of this was John Young. I don't know if anybody's familiar with John. I started working with John back in 2003. And one of the things that in all of his research, talking to different people groups that he looked at, he said that in normal areas of biodiversity, you would expect in a person who had indigenous knowledge of place to have an understanding of 400 species. Okay. 400 species, and at minimum, it was according to what it was. But so herbaceous plants, trees, insects, birds, reptiles, mammals, fish, so on and so forth. If you added it all up, there's 400 neighbors that you know, right? And they were thought of that way. They were not, because there wasn't this idea of separation the same way. It was this. So I want to start with that whole idea, right? 400 species that you know which ones are dangerous, you know which ones can hurt you. And so you don't have false fears, right? Because if you go walking in a landscape where you know nothing, everything becomes scary. So one of the very first things that oftentimes I do when I take people out is we start with just what are the ones that really can hurt you, right? It's like, because you realize that people are scared of everything. And so when you tell them, here are the few species that actually really can hurt you, we've gotten them past that one little thing right there, right? Which is everything is scary. Now down to, I know the things that I actually do need to be concerned about, right? So that's just what I'm saying. This is, to me, the practicality of starting to help somebody actually have the knowledge of place that is one of the precursors to a relationship to place. Because no knowledge of place, how do you have a relationship with place? It's very difficult. So I want to just stop for some second and see if anybody has any. This is more of a conversation.